山のもみじはたつかの川の錦なりけり。Nice.
And who wrote it?
Who wrote it? Noin Hoshi. Noin Hoshi. Not me.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm Michael Oxman. I'm going to read the English version, and you're going to be glad I didn't read the Japanese version. It was actually written by a guy named Monk Noin. So it's Noin Hoshi. So in English, this is a poem about a Japanese maple tree. By the windstorm's blast, from Mamuro's mountain slopes, maple leaves are torn, which turn Tatsura River into a rich brocade. So that's one of a book of 100 poems that I happened to find in my research about Japanese gardens, which I started doing after I found out I was going to do this talk. So, you know, I don't know why they picked a fat old white guy to talk about Japanese gardens, but I do have the perspective of the trees. So I've been climbing trees for about 35 years. That picture of those two ants or grasshoppers or whatever that were on the side of that giant sequoia tree was me and my buddy. When I started working on trees or operating on trees as a tree surgeon back in the 70s, I decided to go to the big trees and get some perspective, because trees are these incredibly humbling things, and they show you where you're at, or maybe where you need to be, and so I have a long way to go, and it's really an honor to be able to come here to Kubota Gardens and talk about these trees. I got to cut down a couple trees here about 5 years ago when some expansion was going on, and the roadway killed a couple trees, the widening project there, but I haven't actually pruned anything here, but I'm hoping to, and someday I'll get there. I know that my associates in Japan have an extremely rigorous apprenticeship program over there. They're required to study for 7 years before they can call themselves a tree surgeon. Here, you just, you know, take out a Yellow Pages ad. So that's my hobby now, is to climb these big old trees. I go out in the woods, I take my crossbow, and that will shoot an arrow with a fishing line attached to it over a branch about 175 feet up in the air. And once I have that fishing line over the branch, then I can tie on a parachute cord to it, and my crossbow happens to have a fishing reel mounted under the forearm stock, so I just reel in the fishing line, and up over that branch 175 feet off the ground is a fishing line, which is about the diameter, a parachute cord, which is about the diameter of a shoelace. So then I tie my climbing line onto that and pull that, and then I can anchor one into the tree trunk, and then I go up the other end, and boom, I step off onto the first branch at 175 feet off the ground. On the big trees, the first big tree I climbed was 330 feet tall. That was about halfway there. So you still have quite a ways to go, but we could use conventional techniques. We didn't have to go for the crossbow up in the tree. I'm hoping to find a tree where it is hard enough to where we need to go do some spectacular stuff. So since then, I've had the privilege of climbing in the giant sequoias, which are considerably fat, fatter than the coastal redwoods. I climbed one that was 27 feet in diameter, which is diameter breast height, which is 4.5 feet above the ground. At the ground level, this 27 foot in diameter tree went down to 33 feet at ground level. So, I mean, this tree was the largest tree known before they found the General Sherman and that grove. It's called the Bull Buck. And so it's so much fun. I like to take people with me. People who haven't been up there are really jazzed, and their mouths drop open. And it's stimulating to be around somebody that has a joyous reaction to a living creature. And so people like it so much that we decided to charge admission. And what we did is we held an auction and we sold 6 spaces on our climbing team to bidders who paid $2,100 per person to climb a redwood tree. And the money went to our tree foundation, which is kind of like your group here, but it's called the Tree Fund. TREE stands for Tree Research, Education, and Endowment Fund. And we give out grants to college professors and college students that are doing tree research. And so I'm finding out that I should read this speech that I prepared, because you guys have better things to do since it's pouring down rain. So what I do is I'm an arborist, and arborists care for trees. And when I asked Mr. Brooks here what the priority is on this particular piece of ground, is tree maintenance. Trees need to have branches removed from them to enhance their health. Okay, pruning is a health treatment for trees. Arborists do other things for trees. You know, we are specialists in planting trees. We work on the 5 Ps, which is plan, plant, provide, protect, and prune. There's a whole bunch of different things we do. And then the other thing that I didn't include in the speech that I should have is that trees do 3 things for us. Okay, there's 3 functions of trees, or 3 purposes of trees, or the role that trees play in our lives is 3 things. It's the social element. It's how we feel, it's how we act, it's how we behave, it's how we relate to other people. Then there's the environmental component. Trees change our world. And the last one is financial, and these days with real estate prices going up, you can find that, say, somebody's yard in a single-family residence is worth a minimum of about $150,000 these days, and if you were to divide that land by the square footage of the trees that cover it, you'd find out that a lot of trees are worth between $5,000 and $10,000 in the city of Seattle a piece. So if there were, say, a hurricane and the trees were to vanish, then the property owner would be within their rights to claim property depreciation value of $5,000 to $10,000 per tree. So a little bit of money invested in taking care of the trees is a good investment. It's something that will come back to you later on. So we promote tree care, and we have an association of arborists. There's about 18,000 members of the International Society of Arboriculture. And we're having a convention later on this month in Victoria, BC, where we get together and we talk about the best ways to care for trees and the research that's been done that can allow us to improve our methods for modifying the environment through working on trees. So that was my first of 9 note cards here. Except that I forgot to say that the best work of the arborist is imperceptible. Okay, when I get done with a tree, I want it to look like I haven't been up there yet. And that's something that's especially important in Kubota Gardens, and I want to talk about these trees here. This is a special place. This place was carved out of the forest. This garden that you're in it's the result of care from the people that came before us who built this place. And it's the result of the care of the people that trained those people that built this place. So the trees are the most conspicuous part of the landscape in many cases. So they're very delicate, and anything we do to a tree can be very obvious. An example, since I know a lot of you people, you've already covered this ground. There's some people here that are way beyond me, but crash down pruning is one way. When you cut a branch and it falls, it can bang against other branches. That's called crash down pruning. And our movement of arborists, we want to clean up our act and reduce the effects of crash down pruning. It's something that We strive to do better. It's one thing that we know we don't want to unintentionally inflict wounds on trees that aren't absolutely necessary. When we cut a branch on a tree, it's therapeutic. However, it hurts the tree. When we cut a branch off, that tree no longer has the leaves that were feeding that tree. Those leaves are the food factory for the tree. The leaves are the source of energy for the tree. It's the way that the tree converts the sunlight into food. We don't want to do anything to reduce the tree's ability to feed itself unless we have a darn good reason. And if we're going to cause damage, then we're being too heavy-handed. So as an industry, we are seeking to do better. The bark is thin-skinned, like on a birch tree. You can scrape the birch bark with your thumbnail and see underneath the living part of the tree, and it's green. There's photosynthesis happening right underneath the bark. A lot of people think that the trees are dormant in the winter, but there's chlorophyll cells that are active. And even on young trees, or on trees that have been through shock, sometimes they can lose their leaves, but they still have chlorophyll going on to feed themselves. So we don't want to disrupt the sensibility of the observer. These trees here are carefully crafted. Believe it or not, a lot of consideration went into whatever pruning cuts were made on them, and a lot of pruning cuts have been made on a lot of these trees, especially on the lower branches. Out in the woods, trees have branches all the way to the ground. Here we can walk right under a tree because those branches have been removed by the people that care for our gardens, and they're doing so on our behalf. So who benefits from the care of trees? Okay, this garden is a refuge. It's a place where you can come and get your act back together. Now I'm not a particularly reverent kind of guy, but when I come to a place like this, I'm quieter than I am right now. I'm soaking it all in. I walked around this place about 3 times the other day. The character of Kubota Gardens just oozes, and if you open your eyes, you can catch a whole lot of it. And so what clues do you need to look for? You know, that's hopefully what the arborist can do. The arborist is actually somebody that works on people. We take care of your tree for you. You know, the bedside manner of the arborist is one of our primary functions, because we tell you what the tree is doing for you. If you have a tree, like say for example, has to be cut down for some reason, that's a tremendous tragedy. However, it's also justifiable, and so we need to help you understand the cost-benefit ratio of what are the liabilities of this tree, how much would it cost to keep the tree going and put it on life support, or should we just get rid of it? So this assemblage of trees, when you have many trees that are next to each other, the way that they're put next to each other, the placement is critical to the design. And everything here was done with careful consideration. Nothing here is by chance. This is all part of a plan. So because this garden is supposed to imitate life, it does imitate life. That was the intent of the designer. How can we take the forest out in the woods, up in the mountains, in the hills, and bring it home and put it right here in the middle of town? You wouldn't even know you're in Seattle if you were blindfolded before you were brought here. You could be in anywhere. You could be in a Japanese garden in Paris. So when we transplant the garden, when we construct a garden, we can't help but stylize it. We can't make a natural garden. Can't. It's impossible. The flavor of the owner is represented by what you see. You know, the fact that the pine tree is there is part of the personality of the person that planted it. And the trees are not structures. They have a personality of their own. They're alive. And that's part of the respect for the tradition that went behind how to decide to plant that tree there, how to decide to prune that tree, how to decide what it's going to be next to. What about the backdrop of trees that's right behind us? This is an amazing collection of extremely varied plant material. So what we want to do is lightly flavor the design with our art. We want the natural part to be most of it. Now, part of my research looked at a book by a German guy that wrote about Japanese gardens that had pictures of these trees that were made out of aluminum. So even though they're clearly trees, they're made out of aluminum. He doesn't have a problem with maintenance. He doesn't have to prune them very often. But that particular garden heavily flavored the tree, and I think it was in a mall, and there was no way that you could get in there and have, you know, the litter associated with flowering or leaf drop on trees. So he didn't have a choice. He did the best that he could, and it came out mostly personality with a little bit of nature. So everything is to a degree. So these trees are an outdoor room divider. What's on the other side of this forest? We have no idea unless we're looking at an aerial photograph. There's houses over there. But we can't tell that from right here. Luckily, we have the tremendous luxury of having a big piece of property here. This place is lush. This is a gem. This is a real jewel. And the city has a lot of investment made in this. The community has thousands of hours invested in arranging for the care of this plot of land. And we have thousands of years of training that went into the cultivation of this landscape here. So this is a treasure. What it helps us to do, it focuses on the life force within us, because we can see this whole wall of greenery around us, and it is a mirror of our own inner life force. So what's out there is the same thing as what's in here. The trees are breathing. The trees inhale oxygen, they burn it up, and they exhale carbon dioxide. And if you were to talk to a science teacher in, say, public school, he would tell you that photosynthesis is understood. And I actually went and did the research, and I looked at my kid's science book, and sure enough, it explained the whole formula of how sunlight is converted into sugar. And I think our kind of establishment needs to reevaluate that and say, you know, actually there is this little thing called the spark of life, which we don't understand, but in the presence of the spark of life, we understand how photosynthesis occurs. So we got to open our eyes. When trees give off oxygen, it's just those little chlorophyll cells out on the leaves. That's the only part of the tree that gives off oxygen, is the part that turns the leaves green. However, a chlorophyll cell is a living cell, and in the process of creating oxygen, it's a factory, and it's burning up oxygen. Chlorophyll cells use up oxygen in the process of creating oxygen. It just so happens that they give off more oxygen than they use up. But a tree is not from Mars. Now, when those little green men show up and climb out of that flying saucer that we don't know how it flies, it's a mystery to us, and yet it was in a movie, so we believe it. You know, I mean, if little green men walked up here, I'd know that they could do it because I saw it someplace, and I wouldn't understand how it happened. Well, trees are not that mysterious, because they're just like us. They're inhaling oxygen, exhaling carbon dioxide after they burn the energy and release it as heat or whatever. So far, I don't know too many trees that glow. So the tree is an upward extension from the soil into the air. And the tree is actually living below ground. The roots of the tree are really what's happening on a tree. When we have a sick tree, most of the time it's what's happening below ground in the soil. And unfortunately, my hands are tied because I can't see below ground. I don't have X-ray vision. I don't know what's happening underground. I can't see what kind of shape the roots are in. I don't know what liquid has flowed across the surface and maybe contaminated the tree. I went and looked at a half-dead magnolia tree the other day, and I told the guy there was nothing I could do for it, but it wouldn't die any further. And he said, "Oh, okay. Well, I dumped my my heating tank out here. I thought I was going to irrigate the tree." Now, he could have told me that before I gave him my diagnosis of I don't know what the problem is. But he said, the only thing in there was some rusty water. So, I was going to give you a secret before I left, because I know there's those people that are way ahead of me. And here it is. When you're pruning a tree, if you want the tree to grow strong and healthy, and if anybody has a pencil, write this down. It's only one sentence. You should be able to remember this. This is the secret of tree care. The secret of young tree establishment pruning. Leave 2/3 of the foliage on the bottom half of the tree. Okay, I'm going to repeat that here in a second. Leave 2/3 of the foliage on the bottom half of the tree. What that does is it causes the lower trunk to get fatter. More stem diameter means a stronger tree, and a stronger tree has more fluid conductive tissue, and it can move nutrients, and it can do things a whole lot better than a tree with a straight skinny trunk. If you cut off all the bottom branches of a tree, you'll have a skinny trunk. The branches actually exercise the tree. So that was the secret. A friend of mine, he ran the rose garden at Jackson and Perkins when I lived down in Oregon for about 15 years. And he told me that when they grow rose trees, they want the trunks to be stout, strong. So what he did was he put fans in the nursery greenhouse, and these rose bushes were blowing back and forth. Well, when a tree bends, it's like exercise. It gets fatter. It has the ability to resist that. So keep your eyes open to the trees. Listen to what the trees are trying to tell you. Okay? And now it's time for a commercial. Actually, two commercials. The first commercial is that trees need maintenance. So everybody call the city council and say, please provide funding for tree maintenance. Okay? If there's any way that the city can realize that they're missing the boat and allowing trees to deteriorate unnecessarily when a little bit of maintenance would help them vastly, we will have these trees around for a lot longer. The trees will die prematurely if they're neglected. And that's not a scare tactic, that's the truth. And the people in the Parks Department, they know that, but they don't get the money. The money stops someplace up above them, and it's going someplace else. So we have a tremendous resource here, so we need to protect it. Oh yeah, and then the other commercial actually is a commercial for another plant sale put on by Plant Amnesty. And so I'm going to just pass out the little flyers. It's on September 25th, which is a Sunday, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And it's kind of like what you guys had here today, but a little drier. And so Plant Amnesty is a group that I'm involved with. We want to end the senseless torture and mutilation of trees and shrubs through malpruning. And malpruning is defined as something that somebody that doesn't know what they're doing shouldn't be doing. So pruning is an art, and we all have to learn somehow. We have to, unfortunately, we get carried away sometimes, and we go a little heavy-handed on a tree or a shrub, or we mistakenly go down to Home Depot and buy a set of shears, which shearing is really bad on shrubs. Don't shear, please. And if you don't, then that will allow you to retain your sensibilities. By respecting the plant, by doing what it would want, if it could talk to you, then you'll be respecting yourself. You'll be respecting the life force within yourself, and you will appreciate it. You will have been responsible for embellishing something that would ordinarily be kind of shaggy and let go looking. So that's my bit about trees. I'm the tree doctor. I have a website called treedoctor.net, and they're calling me now. It's treedr.net, and as soon as I shut off the phone, I'll say that again, treedr.net. That's my website, and I'm Michael Oxman, professional tree surgeon. Thank you.
Well, question from the audience.
How long should you prop up a new?
I'd like to now introduce, we didn't have our you noticed our musical interlude. You might have thought that that was real sweet that Tom Kubota's grandson would sing a song for him, a high school kid, but he's not going to do it, but we're missing a real treat. I mean, this kid is amazingly good. So we're going to try to get him on the program for one of these times.